Thank you for the warm introduction. Thank you for having me, everybody. As mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Neutron, which we refer to as the Integrated Application Network. And today, what I want to briefly introduce is what we call integrated application, which is a new way of thinking about building decentralized applications that we think address a lot of the shortcomings of the space. And to understand why that matters, we kind of can take a brief step back to think about why blockchain and cryptocurrency was brought about initially and what it was supposed to achieve. And the intromission of the technology when it really started taking off was when there was a peak time of disillusion with the established traditional system of managing value and coordinating value across society. And blockchain was introduced as a solution to the fact that a few entities could change the rules unilaterally, because blockchain solves this problem. It ensures that consensus applies to all of the rules so that value and people can be coordinated in a fair and transparent way without the need for a central coordination entity. Now, the sad realization in a way is that today most of the applications of this technology are failing to win compared to their centralized counterparts. And a large chunk of the reason why that's the case is because the limitations of the stack itself have led to worse products, essentially. Signing transactions, paying gas fees is a pretty terrible user experience overall. This is kind of common knowledge. The performance of blockchains is nowhere near that of centralized servers in terms of latency, in terms of the throughput that they provide. And I think perhaps most importantly, one of the key limitations is that these technical limitations have led to poor mechanism design of the applications that are released using blockchain technology. For example, the prime way of trading on chain today remains automated market makers, which as a solution were not designed or introduced because they're a superior trading system or a more capital efficient mechanism, but more so because they are a less gas intensive mechanism than order books, which are generally regarded as a better solution for managing liquidity in markets, but a solution that essentially fits into the constraints of the blockchain essentially. Now, in order to try and alleviate these issues, Cosmos introduced the app chain thesis, which is the idea that if you match one application to one blockchain and you tailor the blockchain to serve specifically the needs of the application, you're able to build better experiences. You're able to essentially tailor the blockchain itself to suit the application's needs, right? And we're seeing examples of this happening with projects like DYDX moving to Cosmos recently in order to be able to use very advanced solutions like in-memory order matching in order to have this better product of an order book on chain in a very efficient manner, right? And so the app chain architecture to build applications provides higher performance, it provides higher customizability, but it has its own limitations. Notably, developing app chains still today, despite massive improvements brought about by more established stacks to doing so, remain a lot slower to build because everything in an app chain is basically custom. It means that the tooling, the auditing, the development processes are kind of also reinvented every time you build a new functionality into an app chain. As a result of this, the costs and the development timeline increase pretty dramatically. And it also introduces a number of additional concerns in terms of coordinating a validator set, coordinating the infrastructure providers of the entire network, securing integrations with various bridge providers, wallet explorers, centralized exchanges, custodians, and what have you, for every new blockchain that you're introducing, every new application in this case. And you also have to deal with the consequences of the asynchronous nature of cross-chain communications. And so all in all, these limitations means that app chains don't fully solve the issue at hand, right? In fact, what we need is a new paradigm for building DeFi applications that is not limited by any one VM virtual machines constraints, is scalable, has the performance benefits of app chains, as well as their most of their customizability, while maintaining the network effects of shared environments. This paradigm exists and it has a name. We call it integrated applications. Integrated applications, in just a few words, are applications that leverage components of the blockchain that exist outside of the virtual machine in combination with smart contracts in order to create better product in a scalable, efficient way and to distribute them efficiently across ecosystem. Advantages of this approach include both higher capital efficiency as well as lower structural risk. And this is kind of like the two sides of the same coin, right? To understand how, like why that's the case, picture a credit protocol, right? Credit protocols in crypto generally are over-collateralized. And so to ensure that they remain solvent, they need to ensure that they're able to liquidate assets when they become at risk, or they become like, they cross the LTV thresholds very, very efficiently. Now, in shared environments, that can create, that can pose some challenges in the sense that you are not guaranteed to be executing these liquidations at the time of peak information or like most fresh information available. And you're not guaranteed to be able to execute first, right? Which means that potentially sophisticated actors could try and front run your liquidation, which results in worst execution for you and profits extraction for them, right? Now, in an integrated application, what you can do is you can leverage the in-protocol oracle of the network in order to ensure that the data that you're using was posted on this same block, essentially, right? You're using the freshest data possible, plus you can segment the block space of the network in order to ensure that the liquidation transactions are inserted first before any priority auction or any just like general mempool. And that allows you to have essentially a guarantee that you will never be front run on your liquidations. As a result of this, the protocol's risk is structurally lower, which allows it to afford to be able to do higher leverage, right? So as a result of like lower risk, the protocol is able to afford higher capital efficiency. Now, integrated applications also have an advantage when it comes to dealing with the multi-chain nature of the industry. And this is manifested in two ways. And the first way is they're able to onboard users from other chains more efficiently because by relying on the native cross-chain interoperability, like infrastructure of the network itself, they're able to protocolize a lot of the complexity of cross-chain operations and to essentially abstract it away from the user so that they're able to essentially provide an onboarding experience that is completely seamless regardless of which network you are, as long as the network that you are on as a user is supported by a general message passing technology like IBC, for example. It also allows the protocol itself to actually scale its operations so that instead of providing services to one market and one ecosystem and one network, it's able to provide it into any number of supported networks of this general message passing layer. In the case of IBC, that's like more than 111 blockchains today, last time I checked at least, which is pretty significant in enabling the application to address a much larger market, right? As a result of this, because you're co-locating very large-scale dApps together, enabling them to synchronously compose, but also be available from all across the interchain, you're maximizing the network effects of the applications themselves, as well as the network as a whole. You're also enabling these applications to command higher margins because the infrastructure that they rely on is not dedicated to this one infrastructure. It is actually its cost is socialized across the entire ecosystem of application that exists on the network, and that allows them to essentially have structurally lower cost and larger addressable markets, which results in higher fees, which means higher margins. And these margins, these additional profits, can be redeployed either in additional innovation to continue furthering your competitive advantage. They can be passed on to users by simply having lower fees, which can help you attract more market share, etc. Now, why did we, get to building the integrated applications, right? Well, it actually stems from our personal experiences as builders. Prior to building Neutron, our team built the leading liquid staking protocol on Terra blockchain, and that protocol was tremendously successful until the collapse. It reached $10 billion TVL at peak. It had achieved dominant market share. And as a result of this, it was faced with a really good problem to have, which is how do we keep the protocol growing, right? What is next? Well, traditionally, you would look to attend to new market. And the way that you would do this is, similar to the Uniswap, the Curve, and other protocols of the world, you would essentially take the code and you would redeploy it to another network that would be your new market. And you would do this as many times as you want to explore to new markets. But the problem in doing so is that every single one of these chains might have technical specificities that might require changes in the code, which means you're now maintaining different versions of the code, multiple instances, with like different accesses and such. And this rapidly gets out of hand, essentially. As your protocol expands, the overhead of just maintaining the protocol, keeping it in shape, keeping it working, keeping it secure, increases dramatically, and it increases like super linearly, which means that the more you expand, the less capable you are to actually work on the product itself, continue to innovate, and continue to ensure that your project is essentially progressing in terms of the product that is offering to users and its role in the industry, essentially, right? You're also getting like fragmented UX. You're not like getting any compounded benefits of existing on these networks. And so this approach, while it works, severely impairs your ability to make the protocol more successful through its expansion. A better way to expand to new markets is to build an integrated application, because what an integrated application allows you to do is to have one code base that leverages cross-chain infrastructure in order to be able to, one, onboard users from anywhere. So let's say you want to liquid stake a token from blockchain A, the protocol is on blockchain C. You can very easily allow the user to route the token from blockchain A to blockchain C, deposit the tokens, and return the derivatives to their wallet, right? With some cross-chain magics, you could even potentially do this like atomically. And so you're able to, one, make the onboarding of users a lot easier, but you're also able to allow the protocol to essentially manage accounts, manage collateral tokens, retrieve data from other networks, which essentially allows you to expand the protocol's functionality. Think of it as a branch kind of, but without actually having to redeploy anything to the other network. As a result, no additional maintenance. You're able to add new networks with very minimal overhead. Some protocol designs actually allow you to add support for a new network with like one transaction only. And you're able to tap into these markets without actually increasing the overhead that your team is dealing with, because you're still only maintaining one version of the code, right? There are additional benefits as well to the fact that since the parts of your protocol that like deal with the business logic across chain are based on smart contracts, you can actually modularize them and have libraries of tools that you can reuse, share with the ecosystem, etc. Now, the problem with integrated applications is that they're only as good as the underlying infra allows them to be, right? And so to empower integrated applications to be the most successful versions of themselves, we developed Neutron, which is the integrated application network, e.g. the only network today that is specifically designed to enable integrated applications to be as successful as possible. Neutron bakes in to the blockchain's code itself very advanced features that it makes available to the smart contract ecosystem so that they can leverage them in their protocol design in order to build more successful applications, essentially. These features include native cross-chain interoperability, so not just the ability to transfer tokens between blockchains, but also the ability for smart contracts to register accounts on other chains, manage, own tokens there, execute transactions, retrieve data permissionlessly from these other blockchains. It includes native automation without having to rely on trusted third-party bot networks. It includes, trading and Oracle infrastructure, whereby the validator set itself of the chain is used to retrieve data and submit it on chain so that the trust assumptions of that data perfectly match. It's a restaked Oracle, so it matches the trust assumptions of the blockchain itself, and it provides developers with tools to customize the fees, the mempools, the block space of the chain itself, so that, for example, if your onboarding strategy to your application required enabling people to trial your application by having the first 10 transactions for free, you could actually encode this and have a block space lane that would only allow certain new accounts that meet certain criteria to execute transactions without having to pay gas for up to a certain limit. And then once the users graduate into full users, you would revert to the normal kind of block space lane. So we sort of designed Neutron to solve the challenges that we faced as builders trying to scale an application across chain. And as a result of these choices and a result of like solving problems that developers are facing, we see a pretty good amount of traction from other developers who want to build successful cross-chain applications, but don't want to like sacrifice all of their time into maintenance and want to really iterate on shipping new products that can scale. Examples of them include Mars, who's building the most efficient perps and credit protocol that is also fully decentralized in its design. It's using the order book infrastructure as well as in-protocol Oracle infrastructure that the Neutron network provides in order to have lower structural risk, which allows it to be more capital efficient, as we discussed previously. Astroport is another example, which is using Neutron's cross-chain infrastructure in order to govern the various deployments it has across multiple chains, where it is the leading DEX. To essentially like wrap it up, blockchain was brought about in order to create products that coordinate the value and people in a trustless, in a fair and decentralized way. But the fact that we have not yet been able to ship products that really compete with centralized solutions is threatening the industry as a whole to become sort of irrelevant if most of the trading volume, price discovery, and other activity remain off-chains primarily. By combining the advantages of shared execution environments like smart contracting platforms and app chains with almost none of the drawbacks of these integrated applications allow developers to build more useful applications that provide a better user experience, are more performant, more capital efficient, and they do so by leveraging components that exist outside of the virtual machine, but combining them with the flexibility and standardization of smart contracts in order to make the development process manageable at scale. If that sounds good to you and you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out. We take a very, as I said before, we started as builders and we're building for builders. And so we have this very platform first approach whereby we want Neutron to be the best servant to your application it can be to empower you to win, essentially. One way to put it is we're on a mission to make decentralized applications win. And so if that's what you're interested in building, just reach out to us. We're happy to chat. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, everybody. So now for questions, Seth?
You mentioned cross-chain interoperability. Sorry. Is that over IBC or your own?
Yeah, so IBC is currently the most advanced standard in terms of actual standardizations of applications built on the general message passing layer. So it primarily uses this, but it is compatible, for example, with Hyperlane, Axeler's GMP, and technically you could use any of these solutions. There are applications that leverage multiple of these solutions. It is a bit of a development headache because you're navigating multiple standards. But one of the things that we're looking to enable in the future is to try and have standardized interfaces across these different solutions. That is not in production today, but it is something that we're looking to drive towards. That makes sense.
And just one other thing, you mentioned automation. How is that implemented on chain?
So Cosmos SDK chains have native automation capabilities through begin and end blockers, which are messages that get executed automatically at every block by the validator set without having to pay gas. Now, we've developed a module called the cron module, which allows anyone to register messages into the end blocker so that they're executed at every single block.
Okay.
You can actually do something a bit more precise than this. You can set the intervals, for example, or the conditions at which you want the message to be executed, if that makes sense.